Nehushtan. Maybe that's when you say gesundheit. Nehushtan, well, it does sound a bit like a sneeze, doesn't it? It is actually a Bible word, a Hebrew word only found once in the Bible, but what it represents is found twice elsewhere. Two rather significant passages. Well, in the New Testament, it's found in John's Gospel. In chapter 3, it's recorded that Jesus said, "Just as Moses lifted up the snake in the wilderness, so the Son of Man must be lifted up, that everyone who believes may have eternal life in him." That snake in the wilderness was what God's people once called Nehushtan. Jesus was referencing the Old Testament scriptures, specifically Numbers 21. It says, "The people of God traveled from Mount Hor along the route to the Red Sea, but the people grew impatient on the way. They spoke against God and against Moses and said, 'Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? There is no bread, there is no water, and we detest this miserable food.' Well, then the Lord sent venomous snakes among them. They bit the people, and many Israelites died. The people came to Moses and said, 'We sinned when we spoke against the Lord and against you. Pray that the Lord will take the snakes away from us.' So Moses prayed for the people. The Lord said to Moses, 'Make a snake, put it up on a pole. Anyone who is bitten can look at it and live.' So Moses made a bronze snake and put it up on a pole. Then when anyone was bitten by a snake and looked at the bronze snake, they lived." Yeah, the people of God were disobedience. And the consequence of their disobedience, their sin, was death. And when they looked at the bronze snake, the Nehushtan, on a pole, they lived. They were spared from the sentence of certain death. Well, what was going on there? Was it a magic snake? Was it the physical act of looking at the symbol that saved them? Well, no. They were saved by faith. Looking at the snake was an act of faith, putting their trust in God alone, and then what He would accomplish in them. Well, the word Nehushtan is in 2 Kings 18. It's where King Hezekiah was introduced, one of the last few kings before Judah was carried off into captivity by the Babylonians. By this time, the kings of Judah were, mostly bad, but Hezekiah was a good one. And verse 4 says, "He removed the high places, smashed the sacred stones, and cut down the Asherah poles. He broke into pieces the bronze snake Moses had made, for up to that time the Israelites had been burning incense to it. It was called Nehushtan." Hezekiah busted the Nehushtan, that precious relic of God's deliverance in the past, so significant that Jesus used it to preach the gospel, to explain the salvation that He provides for all who believe. Yet, Hezekiah found it necessary to smash it. It was no longer an artifact, but an idol. It no longer pointed people to God. People pointed to it and worshipped it as a god. Now, it's a cautionary tale for all of us, right? We solemnize styles, practices, and artifacts, and over time we make them the objects of our worship. We move our focus from God to our religious stuff. So I'm asking God to point out any Nehushtan in my life that needs to be busted up. What style or practice or thing is so precious that it's crowding out the main thing, the gospel, my relationship with Jesus, and the work He wants to accomplish through us, His people. Got any Nehushtan?